For years, Chip and Joanna Gaines were the perfect American couple, two dreamers who built an empire out of grit, love, and an uncanny ability to turn broken houses into dream homes. Their rise was the kind of story people wanted to believe in. A young couple with nothing but ambition, building a business from the ground up and sharing it with the world. With Fixer Upper, they became a cultural phenomenon, and Magnolia became synonymous with warmth, family, and possibility. But even the strongest foundations can hide cracks. While the world watched them flourish, Joanna was quietly battling pain that would eventually force her to confront a truth no renovation could fix. The story that follows isn't just about a famous couple. It's about the fragile reality behind perfection, the moment their lives shifted, and the love that held them together when everything else felt uncertain. The beginning, from Waco dreams to national fame. Before the cameras, before the brand, there were two young people with nothing but belief. Joanna Stevens was a Baylor University student, thoughtful and quiet, dreaming of a future in journalism. Chip Gaines was a charismatic Texas boy who flipped houses to stay afloat after his baseball dreams faded. Their paths crossed in 2001 at Joanna's father's tire shop, and what began as a simple conversation turned into a lifelong partnership. They married in 2003, broke and exhausted, but determined. Their early years were chaotic, sleeping little, working hard, and constantly rebuilding their lives from scratch. When their first business failed, they didn't quit. They opened Magnolia Market and began selling Joanna's handmade decor. They were never glamorous, they were simply relentless. It was their shared belief that they could survive anything that carried them through the struggle. And that same belief would one day make them household names. The Rise, Fixer Upper, and the Dream of a Lifetime. In 2013, HGTV took a chance on a pilot, and the rest became history. Fixer Upper exploded, and Chip and Joanna became America's favorite couple. Their chemistry felt real. Chip's humor and Joanna's calm warmth created a perfect balance. Viewers didn't just watch renovations, they watched a marriage that made love feel simple and achievable. The show wasn't just about building homes, it was about building hope. Each episode was a reminder that even something broken could become beautiful again. As their fame grew, so did their responsibilities. They were no longer just renovating houses, they were running a brand, raising 5 children, and carrying the expectations of millions. But the world only saw the smiles. No one saw the exhaustion behind the scenes, the pressure of staying perfect, or the way success can slowly erode the very thing that created it. The hidden pain. Joanna's Secret Struggle. By early 2022, the Gaines empire seemed unstoppable. Magnolia Network launched in January, and their new shows were thriving. Everything looked flawless. But behind the cameras, Joanna was struggling with a pain she couldn't ignore. What started as back discomfort slowly worsened, until even the simplest movements became unbearable. She hid it from the public, smiling through photos, interviews, and magazine shoots. But Chip noticed. He saw the fatigue in her eyes and the way she would wince when she thought no one was watching. After months of medical consultations, doctors revealed a diagnosis that changed everything. Her spine had deteriorated over years of strain and constant physical work. Surgery wasn't optional. It was necessary. Joanna, the woman who had carried 5 children, managed countless projects and inspired millions, suddenly had to stop and fight for her own body. And Chip's world, once filled with blueprints and deadlines, suddenly narrowed to hospital walls and waiting rooms. The moment that changed everything. Chip's silent despair. When Joanna entered the hospital, there were no headlines, no publicity, no dramatic announcements, just a private battle. Chip stayed by her side, refusing to leave, sleeping in chairs, and whispering prayers that no one would hear. The man who had built a career out of fixing things suddenly found himself powerless. There was no tool to repair fear, no plan to rebuild uncertainty. His identity as the protector was suddenly stripped away, leaving him vulnerable in a way he had never experienced. Fans began to notice his absence. Projects were delayed, cameras stopped rolling, and the Magnolia Empire paused. The world wondered what happened, but Chip didn't answer. He didn't post updates or explanations, because this wasn't a story to be shared. This was a private crisis, and the only thing Chip could do was stay. Stay close, stay quiet, stay present. The transformation. Chip? Without the smile, for decades, Chip Gaines had been the funny one, the man who could laugh through anything and make everyone feel safe. But watching Joanna suffer changed him. Friends described him as quieter, more withdrawn, and emotionally fragile. He stopped posting behind-the-scenes jokes and rarely spoke about work. Instead, he focused on family. He became a caretaker in a way he never imagined. It wasn't just Joanna's pain he was watching. It was the fear of losing the woman who had built his life. This wasn't the first time hardship had touched them. Chip had experienced a heart scare in 2017, and Joanna had been his anchor. Now the roles reversed. The protector became the one needing to stay strong, and he found himself learning a new kind of love. One that didn't require him to fix anything, but simply to be there. And in that moment, he realized something he had never admitted out loud. Not every problem can be solved with hard work. Some must be survived with patience. The public return, a family rebuilding itself. When Joanna began to recover, the world watched for signs of the old Chip and Joanna. But the couple didn't return to their previous life. Their priorities had shifted. Chip remained cautious, keeping public appearances minimal. Yet gradually they began to reemerge. The moment that should have felt like a comeback instead revealed how much they had changed. Their marriage was no longer about a perfect image. It was about survival. They started focusing on their children and their own healing, rather than the empire. And the public noticed. Chip appeared more grounded, more reflective, less like the constant whirlwind of energy he used to be. In many ways, the crisis had forced them to rebuild not a home, but a relationship. They learned that love isn't a flawless structure. It's a fragile thing that requires ongoing care. The controversy, when compassion met judgment. In July 2024, the Gaines returned with a new series, Back to the Frontier, on HBO Max. The show wasn't about home renovation. It was about family survival and values. But instead of praise, it sparked controversy. The series featured Jason Hanna and Joe Riggs, a same-sex couple raising twin sons. For many viewers, it was a heartfelt story of love and resilience. For others, especially some in the evangelical community, the inclusion felt like betrayal. Evangelist Franklin Graham publicly criticized the couple, accusing them of promoting sin and abandoning Christian values. Chip responded, not with anger, but with quiet strength. On social media, he wrote that modern Christian culture had forgotten how to listen, saying, "Judge first, understand later or never." Joanna stood beside him, silent but unwavering. Their response wasn't political, it was human. And in that moment, they proved that their faith had evolved. They were no longer afraid to stand for compassion, even if it cost them support from longtime fans. The hard truth, love isn't perfect, it's persistent. By 2025, the Gaines were no longer just famous. They were older, wiser, and more aware of life's limits. The empire they built still stood, but they were no longer willing to let work consume them. Joanna admitted on the Stronger podcast that balancing marriage, family, and a $50 million brand was harder than it looked. They laughed about how often date nights turned into business meetings, but the laughter carried fatigue. They took dance lessons and workouts, not just for health, but to rebuild intimacy and teamwork. And as their older children began leaving home, Joanna openly shared the ache of watching time pass. Chip's message stayed consistent. Success means nothing without family. If everything disappeared, he would still be content as long as his loved ones were safe and together. The real lesson wasn't how to fix a house. It was how to keep a marriage alive. Because the greatest love story isn't the one that looks perfect. It's the one that keeps going. Outrow, the real fixer-upper story. For years, Chip and Joanna Gaines taught the world how to rebuild what was broken. But their greatest lesson came when the cameras stopped. Their story became less about renovation and more about resilience, compassion, and the quiet power of staying. When Joanna faced her hardest battle, Chip learned that love doesn't always mean fixing. It sometimes means waiting, holding, and simply being present. And when the world judged them, they chose kindness over fear. Their legacy isn't just beautiful homes or successful businesses. It's a reminder that life isn't perfect, and love doesn't require perfection to survive. So the real question is this: do you believe love can survive anything if two people keep fighting for it?